We'll call to order the Board of Franklin County Commissioners meeting for Wednesday, September 6th.
Commissioner Howard?
Present.
Vice Chair Renaud?
Present.
Chair Waymire?
Present.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Present.
Commissioner Dunn?
Present.
If you would please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we come to you today, and Father, we embrace, we invite your counsel, your wisdom for the decisions that have to be made today, God. Father, we pray for your hand of protection over our county, over our state, and over our country. We pray for your peace that passes all understanding to come before us. And God, we just thank you that we have this opportunity to serve and to be in this country and in this county. And everything, we give you the praise and the glory. Amen.
Under correspondence and organizational business, we have a quarterly update from James Oltman of the Franklin County Development Council.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's time for another quarterly report. I do know that you guys have a lot on the agenda today, so hopefully I won't take up too much of your time, but just did want to present some information to you all. So just to get started here, currently right now, when it comes to pending projects, we do have 8 pending projects that we have submitted sites for within the county. Based off the information that we have, those pending projects equate to 3,489 potential jobs, approximately $21 million in payroll, and $1.6 billion in capital investment. Once again, that's based off the information we have. Some of those projects, we don't have payroll numbers. Some of those projects, we don't have job numbers, so it could be higher than that. As you can see, those are some fairly large numbers, which is exciting, and it really reiterates the work that we're doing on Proximity Park, because without that piece of property, most of those we would not really be in the game for. So because of that, we're able to at least submit Franklin County into that mix, and hopefully some of these will eventually pay off. And so just to kind of revisit, I wanted to give an update on where we stand as far as our priorities. If you remember back in January, FCDC, the board, had a board retreat. It had been 2 years since the last board retreat, and we felt it was a good time to really reflect on what the priorities of the organization needed to be for the next couple of years. And so based off of that retreat, based off of those discussions and those meetings, there were 3 main priorities that came about. Obviously, first and foremost is to market Proximity Park. That's the biggest project going on in the county right now, arguably one of the most important projects in the county right now, and FCDC is playing a very valuable role in that process as far as marketing that site to our regional partners, to site selectors, and try and get some industry in there. The second was also to develop a local workforce development plan that really plays in hand with the first priority. Right now, site selectors, companies, they're digging deeper into the workforce issue more than they ever have in the past. It is the hottest topic out there right now when it comes to looking at areas, and in fact, it's one of the most important topics out there right now. Used to be, find a piece of land, the jobs will come. Now they're really starting to look at, okay, where are the people first? Then we can figure out land to make it work. And so we felt to really be competitive in the marketplace when it comes to marketing not only Proximity Park, but any of the other parcels that we have within the county, we needed to develop a local workforce development plan. And then finally, these two kind of tying together is we really felt like we needed to do a better job with business retention and expansion, helping our current industries in town be able to be successful, continue growing, be able to expand and be successful. And with that also plays into investor relations and retention. As you guys are aware, about 30% of our funding comes from private investor members, and so they play a very important role in this as well too, and we want to make sure that we keep them in the fold as well. So just to give you a quick update on each one of these, starting with the marketing plan for Proximity Park. Temporary new signage has been installed at Proximity Park. There's a new sign down on the corner of Kingman and Montana. It's got the logo, got the conceptual on it, contact information. There's also the banner up towards Montana and 35 there, close to where the groundbreaking was held. That way people know, it's branded, that's the name. If for some reason they're driving by, not only can they know how to contact us, but they can also kind of see the vision too when they look at the conceptual drawing that was made. We've been, over the last several months, working on a new website for FCDC. Along with that is a new page specifically for Proximity Park as well. That project is in the works right now. In fact, we're getting close to completion. We are planning on having it done by the 19th of this month to roll out. The FCDC board, full board in July got an update, and then the exec board got an update yesterday as well too, and it's progressing very nicely. I think it's going to be a big upgrade over what we have currently. Once that's complete, we'll start working on the sales packet and marketing materials, the things that when we're actually sitting down with site selectors, when we're sitting down with developers, when we're getting requests for information, we've got professional branded documents that really highlight all the assets that the county has. Another large piece of that has been industry conferences. The SCDC Meet the Consultants, that was one that we attended back in April. TDANA, that's the Transload Distribution Association in North America. Basically anything that deals with rail and shipping, taking it from one mode of transportation to another. That was attended back in May. And then coming up here in a couple weeks, we have the CSCMP, which is the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals conference that we'll be attending as well. Obviously, that's going to be a huge industry for us, as that's one of our target markets. So it'll be a good opportunity for us to really start to get the word out about the assets that we have here within Franklin County. And then finally, we have site selector and developer meetings that we'll look to start scheduling towards the end of the year. Once we have all the sales and marketing material completed, once we're a little bit farther on the progress of the installation of the infrastructure, that way we can show them that we've actually got something in the works and it's not just a piece of land sitting out there at this point. So moving on to the local workforce development plan, I believe I've given an update before, and the members that are on the board have heard updates. We've been actually working with an organization out of Kansas City, the DeBruce Foundation. Just a quick background: the DeBruce Foundation is part of the DeBruce Companies, which actually owns ATC Truck Covers here in Ottawa. So that's how we were able to get connected with them. We've been working with them for literally a year now on a local workforce development plan. We've had over 21 meetings with various industries, with our task force representing various industries. And we've gotten to a point where we're putting the final touches on a plan that's going to go forward to the full board here just in a couple weeks for approval. While I won't go into the details of that yet until it's approved by the full board, I can give you an idea of what we're focusing on when we look at this plan overall. So the first and foremost, what we're really hoping to do is create a pipeline of talent of area high school graduates. We've got some things in the mix that we think will really be able to tap into not just Ottawa high school graduates, Wellsville, West Franklin, Central Heights, that percentage of kids that, once they graduate, they may not be going on right to college. They're wanting to stay and work within the community, but also touch those kids that, maybe they do have plans to go on to college afterwards, but we want to make sure that they know that there's opportunities for them back here in Franklin County, once they graduate. We want to be able to provide professional development opportunities for employees of our current industries within the county. We feel that there's a need there to help our current partners be able to, just help their current employees develop into better, more well-rounded employees. We also want to be able to provide opportunities for career assistance services to current unemployed and underemployed individuals within the community. We feel that there's a need out there for this. There's some things going on in the community currently that a lot of people don't know about. We're just building on some of that, and we feel like we've got a really good program for them as well. And then last but not least is focusing on trying to recruit new workforce and frankly new residents from outside the Franklin County region. When you look at our unemployment numbers for the last 6 to 12 months, Franklin County's been hovering in the high 3s to right around 4% unemployment. And they say, basically at 4% unemployment, you're at full employment. Anybody that wants a job has a job. So we're really taking a look at, if that's where we're at, how do we get more people into our region that want to live and work here so we can increase our labor basin. And then when it comes to business retention and expansion, we've recently implemented a formal business retention and expansion strategy. That was not something that has been in place in the past. It had just been basically kind of going with the flow and trying to, meet with current industries as needed. We are putting a formal strategy in place as far as the number of times that we meet with our not only our members, but also businesses within the county that are not FCDC members, to put a little bit more of a strategy to it. We're compiling basically a worksheet or a questionnaire, an interview tool that we will use when we go and visit with these businesses to kind of figure out, where they're at and where their challenges are and what we can do to help them expand. We're also utilizing a new contact management tool. Before, everything was just, done in either Excel or, notebooks or, something that wasn't very central, couldn't be tracked very well. With our new project tracker, it does give us the opportunity to track contact with local businesses as well. So that's going to help us increase our effectiveness. And finally, we want to help create value to current members, which will help with investor relations and retention. By being able to get out and help our current industries more, we feel like we'll be able to provide a little bit more of a value to them, show them that there's a value to being an FCDC member, and that'll help with that. So that is what I have for you guys today. I am more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
One question came up with me is, wasn't any crops planted on the south end of Proximity Park? Was that due to starting to move dirt, or is there a reason?
That's something I would have to check with city and county staff. I'm not aware of any reason for that.
Does your tracker give you the ability to track companies that have come back multiple times to look at different pieces of property, or to track a specific piece of property that people continually, or different businesses continue to look at, that looks like it might be a more prime piece of real estate that businesses want to locate to then?
Yeah, so with the tracker and with the scorecard, we've got the ability to break out, a graph and a chart showing which properties within the community have been submitted for projects, and you can see, if for example, Proximity Park is getting submitted, 50% of the time or 20% of the time. The one thing that I caution is it's tough to see at that aspect which one the companies are choosing, because when the project leads come down, the way that it works is they usually give us parameters on what they're looking for. Certain number of acres, infrastructure that can handle a certain amount of load and things of that nature. At that point, then we submit what sites we feel best would fit that project based off those parameters. Even as far as sometimes, when we know like what the zoning and everything might be. So, that's where on our end, once those project leads come in, I work with city and sometimes county staff, depending on the location of the project or the potential site we're going to submit, to be able to make sure that that site can handle the parameters of the project. And so, but we can see, on our reporting, of the project leads are coming down, this is the range of acreage that's being requested. This is the size of building that's being requested. So we have an idea, hey, a lot of the stuff we're getting is, 100+ acres, or, they want to be, in a building that's, 100,000 square feet.
I had a question about the workforce. Obviously, the amount of pay a job provides would dictate to some degree how far a person would be willing to drive to that job or relocate.
Right.
There must be a formula somewhere that somebody has on that, but in a current unemployment situation, it may be unfair to think this, but I'm wondering if that's not a group of people that maybe would accept a $10 an hour job as opposed to $20 or $30 an hour jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not really, I guess, the question so much as they have to look at, or you have to look at, will this job pay enough money to draw the workforce from Lawrence, Olathe, Burlington, wherever it might be, to come to that job?
Right. No, and definitely when we've looked at the workforce development plan, we've had representatives around the table, both from the North Industrial Park, as well as, the hospital's been at the table, the educational institution. So we've got a good, variety of the industries represented. And that is something that we have, talked about as well, too, that, at a certain point, you can lead a horse to water, but they're going to have to, they're going to have to drink. So, we can do what we can to help the individual businesses with their turnover rates and retention rates and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, it may require some changes internally on their end to be able to make the most effect. And the ones that we've talked to understand that too. And I think you're actually starting to see some of that currently within our current industries, where the rate of pay has gone up to try and compete with some of the other jobs that are out there.
Other questions for James? Well, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Time. Derek, do we have anything from the Administrator's Office on correspondence or organizational business?
I do not, no.
All right. Is there anyone signed up for general public comment? All right. That would be for items not on the agenda. So that brings us to our consent agenda, which today would include considering to approve minutes from our August 30th meeting, claim vouchers in the amount of $367,922.19. Tax change orders in the amount of a negative $342.22. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chair Waymeyer?
Yes. All right, that brings us to our first item of business, which is to consider a special use permit for the co-op for the construction and placement of 2 bulk storage containers for grain. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Commissioners. As you've indicated, the first item that I have for you this morning for consideration is the application for a special use permit to permit the construction and operation of 2 bulk grain storage facilities located in an agricultural zone. At their meeting in August of this year, the Planning Commission has recommended to the County Commissioners to approve the special use permit subject to the 7 findings and 7 conditions that were included in the draft resolution that you have before you as part of this staff packet. The special use permit was initially heard in July. However, this matter was continued because there wasn't sufficient numbers of voting quorum. We had several of the commissioners, planning commissioners that were present that felt that they had to recuse themselves because there might be a conflict of interest. And that didn't leave a voting quorum, so the matter was continued to the August meeting and was approved, subject to those conditions and findings that we've just referred. Subsequent to that action, we have received, or the county clerk has received, a protest petition as provided by the Kansas statute. That protest petition was opposed, and I think you have received information from the petitioners on this as to why they were opposed to the decision of the Planning Commission. Staff has reviewed the protest petition and finds that it does satisfy the provisions of the statutes, KSA 12757F1, that at least a sufficient number, 20% or more, of the surrounding property owners that are required to be legally noticed of this application have filed that petition. There were roughly 50% of the property owners that were within that 1,000-foot radius. And that will require then a 3/4 vote of all the members of the governing body to sustain the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Want to make that clear right up front. There were several issues that were discussed by the Planning Commission, and I think they did give a lot of consideration to the potential of amending or adding conditions. However, in their final action, they did submit to you the recommendation of staff. And you have a copy of, I think, all of that information in your packet. We have representatives of the petitioners here this morning. We also have representatives of the applicant here this morning that will probably want to address more specifically some of the concerns you have. I would like to have an opportunity to talk about the comprehensive plan because I think there was some misunderstanding of what that plan represents. So I would like to have an opportunity later to discuss that with you.
All right. The way we'll handle this, first we'll have the applicant or their designee come up. Then we'll have, understand the opposition's kind of elected Mr. Stone King to speak on their behalf. We'll allow him time to speak. After that, I'll open it to anyone else who feels they have something they need to add. Then I suppose we'll have Larry back to talk about the comprehensive plan, and then commissioners will be able to ask follow-up questions of anybody and vote. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Blaine Finch of 101 West 2nd here in Ottawa, the firm Finch, Covington & Boyd, and we appear on behalf of the applicant Ottawa Co-op. I'm happy to present at this point. I'm also happy to let the opposition present. I understand they've given you a packet that Mr. Walrod referenced. I've not seen that packet, so I don't know what other concerns may have been raised since the time of the Planning Commission meeting, and if it would make sense to have them present first and let us follow up addressing those concerns, I can do that, or if you want us to present now, I can do that. It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
go ahead and present now, and we can
Okay.
always, if we have questions, go back to you.
And,
Happy to do that.
and the lawyer in me, Cole, would say that consider allowing Mr. Finch rebuttal time, perhaps, because if he hasn't had the opportunity to address any concerns, certainly I would want to hear what the co-op has to say about any potential conditions or requests that are made. So,
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to come before you this morning. I know you have a lengthy agenda, and I'll try to be brief in my comments, but I do want to give you some of the background from the August meeting with the Planning Commission and share with you why co-op is making this application and why we think really it's a good idea for the county. And it boils down to 3 points, and that's basically economics, the law, and public policy. A special use permit is basically a device that allows you to permit certain land uses that would be essential or desirable to the community in a district in which their intensity or their actual existence may otherwise not be completely compatible. And that's what we're here today to determine, whether or not this use is essential or desirable to the community. I can tell you that as far as economics go, agriculture is one of, if not the largest industry, not only in the state of Kansas, but here in Franklin County. We have over 350,000 acres in production of one kind or another, and in 2012, we had over $100 million in agricultural outputs coming out of Franklin County. That number doubled between 2007 and 2012, and my guess is we're even higher today, probably close to doubling again as I stand here before you in 2017. Agriculture is essential to Franklin County, and I would argue that it is desirable that we have agriculture throughout the county, particularly at this location near Lake Loop. I have Miss Mandy Rowe here this morning. Mandy, if you'll raise your hand. Mandy is from the Kansas Cooperative Council. We had her colleague Leslie Kaufman here for the Planning Commission meeting to talk generally about the value of agricultural co-ops and what they mean to the state and what they mean to counties like Franklin County. And I will not have her stand up and speak unless you want to ask her a question, but I want to make her available to you if there's any more information you need about the economic value of the Ottawa Co-op. Currently, what we have going on is that farmers are harvesting grain, in this case corn, that's what the bunkers are for, and then that corn has to be trucked to Edgerton and stored up at the DeLong facility up there before being shipped all over the world on the intermodal. That basically necessitates the payment of terminal rent to the DeLong Company and to other interests in Johnson County, and basically means that instead of Franklin County grain earning Franklin County profits, we're paying a tax to Johnson County to store our grain. The economics of this are quite simple. Allowing the construction of this bunker, allowing this special use permit, will allow us to keep Franklin County grain stored and sold out of Franklin County instead of being stored and sold out of Johnson County. And ultimately, that means more money in Franklin County taxpayers' pockets to invest in equipment, vehicles, real estate improvements, and farm improvements that ultimately broaden the tax base here in Franklin County. That's the economic argument. And if that were all there were, we still think that would be a fine basis for approval today. But your job today is to sit as a quasi-judicial body, right? You've heard that phrase before. It means you're kind of acting as judges, and the courts and the legislature have given you some factors that you're supposed to consider. You've heard of the Golden case. You've heard of the KS Shopping Center case, because I know Larry likes to give you the background on planning and zoning law when he gets the chance to be in front of you. And so I want to talk a little bit about those factors, and they're included in your resolution this morning that we're asking you to approve. The first of those is whether or not the approval of the special use would be consistent with the intent and purpose of these regulations being the county zoning resolution. And I want to read to you a little bit from the permitted uses. This is an A1 district, Ag 1. Permitted agricultural uses and activities included the necessary operations, including storage, processing, and sales of products grown on site. That's a permitted use. Remember, we're talking about a special use today, so we want something a little more than that. And so if we look at the special uses that are permitted, number 14 is sales of ag produce and similar products when not grown or produced on the premises. And the one right below that, 15, such other uses which are not listed as a special use, but which are determined by the Planning Commission to be in keeping with the intent of the zoning regs and deemed to be compatible with the uses permitted by this article. What we're talking about is essentially the permitted use of storage, processing, and sales, but allowing that to be done for crops that are not necessarily grown on that site. It is absolutely in keeping with the permitted uses, the special uses, and the purpose, which the purpose of the A1 district is to provide for a full range of agricultural activities on land used for agricultural purposes, including processing and sale of agricultural products. It goes on to say raised on the premises. But again, that's what we're asking for today is a special use permit to allow that for products not necessarily grown on this site. Whether the location, the second factor, of the proposed use is compatible to other land uses in the surrounding neighborhood. The surrounding neighborhood is predominantly agricultural. The reason you were so able to get a protest petition together is because there are about 6, 7 landowners around the site. And all of those that have residences on them either engage in agricultural activities themselves or are surrounded by agricultural fields or pastures. This is an agricultural area, and this is what we're asking to continue. 3, whether the proposed use places an undue burden on the existing transportation and service facilities, and if so, whether such facilities are provided. Note that the phrase is undue burden, okay? Will there be some burden on the facilities? Absolutely, because you're talking about expanded storage. So there will be more trucks, there will be more loads brought in, and there will be more loads taken out, ultimately for sale at market. However, the nature of a storage facility and sale facility like this one is that it's busy twice a year. Basically, at corn harvest, you'll see a lot of traffic bringing corn in, and then probably midwinter, when the market is right, this product will be sold and transferred from here to be shipped all over the world and utilized elsewhere. So those 2 busy times per year are not an undue burden, and we have had storage, Co-op has had storage of soybeans and corn at this facility since 1988. So this is not a new use. This is a use that's almost 30 years old. It's just an expansion of that use and additional storage for additional corn at that facility. You'll note if you see the aerial, there's 2 what appear to be oil tanks there. Those tanks were purchased in 1987. They were rehabbed and retrofitted between 1987 and 1989 and put into use as storage, for one for corn and one for soybeans. 4, whether the proposed use is made necessary or desirable because of change or changing conditions in the area affected. You know, quite frankly, our farmers are the best in the world. They have access to more technology. They have access to more labor-saving devices and more ability to produce more per acre than anybody else in the world, and they've done that. We've had great growing seasons the last couple years, and we've ended up with a 2 million bushel surplus in the Ottawa Co-op trade area. That is 2 million bushels more than we can store. And that's why Co-op has gone out and asked for storage facilities both in Burlingame on the western end of their service area and at Les Loup on the eastern end of their service area, so that they can accommodate the success that our farmers are having. The unfortunate byproduct of that is you look at commodity prices and you see that our farmers are hurting there and victims of their own success. But all the more reason for us to attempt to try to maximize their profit and not pay storage taxes somewhere else. 5, whether the applicant's property is suitable for the proposed use. This property has been used for storage and sale of natural resources for years. I told you there were tanks on the property. You see them in the aerial. Those stored oil and other hydrocarbons, which were then sold to market. So it saw tanker traffic coming in and out of that facility for years, and then grain for the last 30 years, and now we're just talking about expanding the grain use. So this is property that's been used for storage and sale for years. 6, and this is a big one, whether the proposed amendment would be in conformance to and further enhance the implementation of the comprehensive plan. So what does the comprehensive plan say about an application like this one? This is from the policy statement. Franklin County's unincorporated land use is primarily associated with preserving agriculture. The intent of the Franklin County Future Land Use Plan is not to regulate agricultural land uses, but to support and preserve opportunities for a sustainable farm economy. And getting those goods from farm to market is part of what makes that a sustainable farm economy. Objective 1.2 from the same comprehensive plan, support the viability of agriculture as a business and a way of life. As a business, the Ottawa Cooperative Association, and as a way of life for its members, its constituent farmers. Objective 1.4, minimize the impact of non-farm residential development on farm operations. Minimize the impact of non-farm residential development on farm operations. Farming comes first in the rural areas of Franklin County. That is the Commission's policy statement. That is the policy statement contained in the comprehensive plan. And that's what we're asking for today, that agriculture be prioritized and agricultural operations be prioritized. Policy 4, the Planning Commission finds that agricultural activities conducted on farmland in areas in which non-ag uses have moved are often subjected to nuisance lawsuits, and that such suits encourage and even force the premature removal of the lands from agricultural uses. Franklin County supports the protection of farmland and agricultural activities as provided in, it gives a state statute about farm nuisance lawsuits, which protect agricultural activities conducted on farmland from nuisance lawsuits. What are nuisance lawsuits? Dust, noise, hours of operation. What are the complaints we've heard thus far from the opponents? Dust, noise, hours of operation. This is essentially an attempt to hold up an agricultural activity based on nuisance principles by opposing the special use permit. And we ask that you reject it and do what's in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Final statement from the comprehensive plan. Since residential development is envisioned to be permitted in rural areas, the desired outcome of this plan is to address the location, design, character, and impact on county roads in order to minimize its impact on ag. Again, the focus is on ag. The focus is on maintaining Franklin County's rural agricultural character. We believe then that this application is absolutely in conformance with your comprehensive plan. A process that was used included citizens at town hall meetings across this county, and then came up through the Planning Commission and the County Commission. And these are the policy statements that you all have adopted and previous commissions have adopted to guide development. We ask that you follow those today and approve the application. 7, whether the relative gain to the public health, safety, and general welfare outweighs the hardship imposed on the applicant by not approving the proposed special use. Denial does not improve public health, safety, or the general welfare of the county. Storage operations will continue at this site, albeit in a much more limited capacity, in the current capacity, than what's proposed, but that does nothing to benefit the general health, safety, and welfare of the county. It might make the opponents happy, but the reality is it ends up taking dollars out of Franklin County. It reduces our tax base. It makes it harder for us to be prosperous. It makes it less likely that our farmers have additional funds to invest and expand our tax base. Finally, the Planning Commission, in this case, the County Commission, may provide that approval be contingent upon acceptance and observance of specified conditions. We have no objection to the conditions contained in the Planning Commission's recommendation. We would be fine if you wanted to adopt those today. No objection. I think that at the Planning Commission level, the opponents had several additional conditions they wanted to impose, many of which were beyond the scope of the applicant to perform. They were essentially limitations on the County Commission or directives to you all to do this thing or to not do that thing. And we ask that you reject all of those out of hand because that's simply not the appropriate place to have those kinds of discussions about stop signs and speed limits and that sort of thing. That's not a standard condition in a special use permit. So I want to talk briefly about concerns because I know some of the ones that we heard at the Planning Commission. What about this bridge on Texas Road? That bridge has carried grain trucks since 1988. This facility has been in use for 3 decades. We're talking about more trucks. There's no doubt about that. There will be more trucks going across that bridge, but there also is another way into this facility from Riley Road to Riley Terrace and down Texas Road from the north, and we believe that many farmers will use that route as well. But there is no doubt, and we're not here to tell you that there won't be some additional trucks going across that bridge. There likely will be. However, half the trucks that go across that bridge are going to be empty, either empty coming in to pick up or empty leaving after they've dropped off, and no one knows for certain how many trucks that will be. The opponents have tried to do some thumbnail math and come up with the number they think it will be, but we simply don't know because there are multiple ways into the facility. If the permit is denied today, truck traffic won't stop using the bridge. It will continue to use the bridge. Not only co-op's truck traffic in and out of the current bins, but also county rock trucks, oil tanker trucks, farm trucks going from their fields to Edgerton to drop off grain for storage if co-op's facility is full. And let's face it, across this county, 574 square miles, we know that there are several times that ag trucks, rock trucks, oil trucks, semi-trucks utilize the county's bridges. This bridge, as I understand it, doesn't even show up on your priority list as a bridge in need of help. And keep in mind that it's been used for this for almost 30 years. There was a statement made at the Planning Commission about the taxes that it would take to maintain this bridge if something went wrong. I can tell you that the Ottawa Co-op pays more in taxes than most of us in this room. And if you add the taxes paid by its constituent members, it's a healthy chunk of what comes in to the county's coffers. They have a vested interest in making sure that we don't recklessly use county infrastructure and that we don't take foolhardy chances with things as important as county roads and bridges, and they have no desire to do that. If we didn't believe that this application was in the best interest of the county and that continued use of the bridge, as has been done since 1988, would not cause additional harm, we wouldn't be here asking today for this special use permit. Co-op stands to lose big if the infrastructure fails, not only because of its operation, but because of the taxes that it pays. So we're all in this boat together, and no one wants to do anything to harm the county's bridges or its roads. You're going to hear about dust. Yep, it's dusty. County roads are dusty. Like I told you, trucks have been coming in and out of this area for 30 years. This is the first we're hearing the complaint about dust. And the reason we're hearing about it is because the rock trucks that were doing the site prep back in the driest part of summer were kicking up a lot of dust. And when we became aware of that, Co-op called the county and said, can we put down some dust control? Can we sign on to your contract? And unfortunately, at that time, the county's contract had closed. And so Co-op did the next best thing it could. It mixed up some of its own dust control chemical, the same magnesium chloride that you all put down. And it went out and it treated the roads. It got one application in, and then it was asked to stop, so it didn't put down any more. So it wasn't as effective as the county's dust control might have been. But there was an intent there. And my understanding is that Clark Winger, the Co-op's operator, has already contacted the county and tried to sign up for next year's contract. And I believe they're on the list. So that is a concern. That is one that we have tried to mitigate. Unfortunately, the opponents want 1.5 miles of dust control out there. That's not economically feasible, and it's not really how you all do dust control. Typically, you put down a strip in front of the residence or in front of the driveway for a residence out of a safety concern. And we can talk about that. We're not opposed to participating in something like that out here. We would prefer a 300-foot strip in front of the residences within 1,000 feet. We think that's a reasonable amount of dust control, not the 1.5 miles of continuous dust control that's being asked to be laid down by the opponents. Finally, let's talk about the neighbors in the neighborhood. These are good folks, and this is a tough decision for you. We always hate when this happens because Co-op is a good neighbor. Its constituent members are part of this community. They're part of the community up around Les Loupes and Wellsville. The Co-op, by its very nature, is part of the community. And we don't like when we find ourselves in disagreement with neighbors nearby. The Co-op and its staff have gone out on numerous occasions to meet with the neighbors. They've offered to do some screening. They've offered to help fix one neighbor's driveway. They've offered to switch the exhaust fans on the bins so that they point away from all of the residences, and if you grant this permit, that will be done anyway. Their storage facilities use Ecolab, a certified rodent and pest control company. When the grain goes sour, it's not left on the site. Anything that's left in the bunker, it's taken to the landfill and disposed of in accordance with KDHE regulations. So they do all that they can to be good neighbors and keep their site clean, and they've gone out on numerous occasions to talk with the neighbors in this area. And every time headway was made, another demand was added. The goalposts were moved. You remember Charlie Brown and Lucy trying to kick the football, and every time he goes to kick the ball, she pulls it back. And unfortunately, that's what we've had in this case. But here's the thing to remember about the neighborhood, and it wasn't brought up at the Planning Commission level, but it should be brought up today. There are 7 residences near this facility, 7. 6 of the 7 acquired their residence after Co-op was operating a storage facility on Texas Road. 6 of the 7 came to this site with grain trucks already running down the road, already kicking up dust, already using the bridge, already been there twice a year for harvest and then subsequent sale to market. Remember what we said about nuisance lawsuits earlier. The Register of Deeds, and I'm happy to provide that email to you that shows the purchase dates for all of the owners out there. You're not allowed to come to the nuisance and then complain. And we don't think this is a nuisance. But it is important that it's understood that this use has been in place for 30 years and that according to the Register of Deeds, properties were purchased subsequent after that 1987 purchase by the Co-op. So one exception is the Jones family at 3884 Texas Road. And they acquired theirs in 1961. We can't beat that one. But all the others are after that in time. So I told you there'd be one more argument about public policy. And I just want you to look out today and see the farmers and others who depend on the farm economy. And I'd ask that all of those who are here today in support of the Ottawa Co-op special use application, just raise your hand. These farmers and ranchers and co-op employees are people who depend on the ag economy in the county, and we ask you to please keep it strong. We ask you to support the special use permit application today, and we're going to be here to answer any questions you have and deal with any objections that are raised, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you, and thank you very much for the time this morning. Appreciate it.
Mr. Stone King.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
My name is Ted Stone King. I live at 4030 Reno Road in Ottawa, Kansas, in the Franklin Township. I was requested to speak for our neighborhood group's collective interest and concern regarding the application of the special use permit requested by the Ottawa Co-op. This group consists of 8 families owning property within the 1,000-feet boundaries of the proposed special use permit, and 2 families whose health, safety, and general welfare will also be affected by the proposed special use permit. I have a signed sheet from the group confirming their request that I speak in their behalf today, because most of those members couldn't be in attendance due to work commitments and other commitments that they have. Councilor Brown, I don't know if you want this copy or whether the county clerk needs this for. As you've heard, our protest petition has been declared valid by the county. 6 of the 8 families on that protest petition all reside on their respective property. The other 2 of the 8 are hoping to one day establish their residency on their properties as well. Of the 10 families of the total group, and this is in direct dispute of what Mr. Finch had to say, the Jones family has resided on their property for 56 years. Mrs. Shirley Johnson and her son have resided for 37 years, with her son and his wife and family establishing their residence along the way. The Schindel family has resided for 34 years, and the Wolford family for 32 years. All acquired their homes prior to the co-op acquiring the oil tanks on Texas Road and starting grain storage there. Members of the group over the years have in fact made complaints to the County Public Works, the Sheriff's Department, and the Ottawa Co-op regarding concerns of safety due to the high volumes of trucks traveling the roads to and from the co-op's facility, creating enormous amounts of dust, restricting visibility for all motorists, and traveling over bridges not designed for the weight of those trucks. The only thing that resulted from their complaints was former County Public Works Director Ray DiGiulio had a contractor add steel beam supports under the Reno Road Bridge, after which the 15-ton weight limit signs were removed from that bridge. These added supports today restrict the flow of debris coming down the creek during periods of high water, creating huge brush dams against the bridge support. This condition currently exists at the site with the recent heavy rains. You can drive by there and see for yourself. The water is going to push against these brush dams against that bridge, and I'm sure that that would have an adverse effect that Mr. Haig might be able to comment to. The health and safety issues associated with the proposed facility and the existing facility should be the greatest priority in the evaluation of this special use permit. Emergency service providers, school buses, mail carriers, county citizens, and visitors all travel these roads with their safety being jeopardized by the hazardous conditions created by the volume of heavy trucks, many of which are traveling too fast for the conditions. And now the co-op, in requesting this special use permit, wants to double and eventually triple the amount of heavy trucks going to and from the proposed facilities. You heard Mr. Finch say that we've done some thumbnail calculations. Well, just a quick sample shows their current facility is listed at capacity of 700,000 bushels. That would be 1,400 trucks if you just used the simple example of semi-trucks and 1,000 bushels per trucks in and out, another 1,400 at transfer time. You add to that their second proposed bundle of 600 bunker of 600,000 bushels, again, using just the simple example of the semi-trucks. That's another 1,200 trucks in and out, another 1,200 trucks at transfer time, in and out. The second bunker, another 600,000 bushels, another 1,200 trucks in and out, another 1,200 trucks at transfer time, all within a 4 to 5 month period. So that simple math using the semis calculates out to 7,600 trucks using 4 potential in and out access points to the co-op's facility. And one of those major points is over the 13-ton bridge that Mr. Finch made light of the fact that it's been used for the last 30 years illegally by loaded trucks going across this bridge. At what point does this bridge become weakened? I requested from the county copies of the bridge inspection reports. The county clerk provided me the 2013 and 2015 reports, as the 2017 reports haven't been finalized yet. Every 2 years is when that bridge gets inspected. So I'm uncertain of when it was inspected in 2017, but with the high volume of dump trucks that cross that bridge carrying materials to the co-op's proposed facilities, it could be a potential of up to 2 years before that bridge is inspected again for damage. There's a very great concern that that weakened bridge, that one day a school bus load of children will be crossing that bridge, and that bridge chooses to collapse at that point. Obviously, based on Mr. Finch's observation, it's had 30 years of wear and hard use on that bridge. Zoning Regulations, Section 4-3, Special Uses, Section 4-3. The following uses may be permitted by approval of the special use permit as provided in Article 19 of these zoning regulations and subject to such conditions as recommended by the Planning Commission and adopted by the Board of County Commissioners to ensure utility and value of adjacent property and the protection of public health, safety, and general welfare. Sadly, and of an unacceptable nature, the Resolution 26-2017, which was passed and adopted by the Franklin County Planning Commission, contains no listing of conditions to ensure the utility and value of adjacent property and the protection of public health, safety, and general welfare. And the information contained in the staff report to the Planning Commission and a meeting with Mr. Walrod on August 15th that included Terry Wolford and myself, there was nothing that substantiated that health concerns and safety concerns were identified, evaluated, and addressed. When queried about rodent control, Mr. Walrod responded that we could request to include it in the conditions of the permit. Shouldn't this have already been addressed by the planning staff in their report? What about the rotten and molded grain removal and disposal? There's nothing in anything other than what Mr. Finch stated today that the co-op intends to do with the rotted grain and the cleanup of the grain at that facility. You know, at the Planning Commission meeting, I asked if there's any chance that this could end up in the creeks. For those of you that have been out there and visited the prepared site and looked at the pad and looked at how the aprons drain off to the corners out there, and in fact, with all the rain we just had, the damage done by all the water running off of that pad out there, you know, there is a real concern that some of this product could end up in the nearby creeks. You know, what about the odor control? The newest property owner within the 1,000-foot boundary, the George family, Mr. George was previously from the state of Nebraska. And in his younger years, he worked at a grain storage facility similar to what's being proposed here today. And Mr. George indicated that there are odor concerns with a facility of this nature. What about the noise pollution created by the drying fans? This is the first we've heard that those fans may be relocated to prevent the noise from affecting the Johnson families that live across the road from here. What about explosion concerns and prevention measures? Nothing's been talked about any of those, and I've not heard anything that addresses that particular issue. What about the infrastructure in the area that should an accident occur, an explosion happen, and a fire develop, that fire trucks, first off, would be able to get to the site, and then would they have the available water to them to contain the fire that would be prevalent with a storage facility of this size? I talked with our rural water district operator. He said that the co-op does have a water line ran to their existing facility there, and he suspects there might be a hydrant somewhere. This is the same water line that he said ran to my property. And in periods of high water use by the neighbors, if they're watering their cattle, et cetera, our pressure drops about in half. So are firefighters going to be able to roll onto this site and connect with a garden hose to contain a fire? Mr. Finch talked about the resolution that you're going to be asked to sign today. And he talked about the fact that you're going to be acting in a similar capacity as a judge. And when you sign that resolution, you look at some of the points in this thing. The fact that, number one, that the special use permit is consistent with the county zoning regulations. You know, this is not correct. Permitted uses talk about landowners. Special use permits talk about and give clear, concise language of what should be allowed. And that's spelled out in number 14. You know, it would appear that the drafters of the zoning regulation use this clear, concise language to keep situations such as the commercial storage of grain in an A1 ag zoning area from occurring. You know, it was argued that how can you have the sales of grain without storage, when in fact this practice has been utilized for many years. There's a company called Agmark, LLC, that appears to do just that. And the Ottawa Co-op and their association with Agmark, LLC, has publicly stated, and I quote from Mr. Winger's August News letter, management of the grain accounting, merchandising, and logistics has transitioned to Agmark. Agmark LLC is headquartered in Beloit, Kansas. Most corporations report their revenue stream up through their headquarters and home offices. Is that going to be the case with all of the revenue that's been discussed here today that's going to come to Franklin County? Will it actually come to Franklin County, or will it be reported to Beloit, Kansas? That the special use permit is in conformance with and would further enhance the comprehensive plan. There's been a lot of talk about the comprehensive plan. If you look at the comprehensive plan that talks about on page 46, policy 4, assuring that roads will provide access to the site that are capable of handling traffic without causing congestion or undue deterioration. Sites should be located with access to hard surface roads. And when you look at that, you're 1.25 miles from a hard surface road. You're a long ways from any infrastructure. And it's already been acknowledged by the neighbors that live along Texas Road that as trucks line up to access the facility there, that oftentimes there's not enough room on that road for emergency response vehicles to get by and pass if they needed to. That as conditioned, the special use permit will not overburden the county roads or other public services. A flyer published by the Kansas Highway Patrol entitled Weight Enforcement in Kansas, in the section titled Why is Weight Enforced? It lists the following bullet points. Overweight vehicles damage roadways and shorten their life. One 5-axle truck weighs about the same as 20 automobiles, but its impact on the roadway is the same as 9,600 automobiles. The last bullet point listed there talks about an axle weight of 26,000 pounds is only 30% greater than an axle weight of 20,000 pounds, but the effect on the roadway is 200% greater. The bridge on Texas Road just north of the Reno and Texas intersection is posted with a 13-ton weight limit sign. This bridge is regularly crossed by heavy loaded trucks of both the semi and straight truck variety. Many heavy dump truck loads of rock and lime crossed this bridge. The materials were visible over the sideboards of the bed and were uncovered as they were being transported to the site. We talked about the bridge inspection reports and the potential damage that could be done to this bridge. Item 4, that is conditioned, the special use permit will not unduly affect the character of the surrounding community. Comprehensive Land Use Plan, page 15, second paragraph states, another goal of the land use plan is to preserve Franklin County's rural lifestyle, character, and natural beauty. There isn't any natural beauty about the proposed facility or the existing facility, for that matter, which is an eyesore. The rusting, seemingly neglected tanks, and those tanks are pictured in part of the collateral that was provided at the agenda today, greet visitors as they enter Franklin County on southbound I-35. Item 5, that is conditioned, the special use permit will not impact property values of the surrounding properties. How could this not impact property values? Would you want to stare at this facility from your front yard? I pose the same question to you that I posed to Mr. Walrod. Would you buy a home on a rock road knowing that thousands of heavy trucks will be traveling back and forth in front of your home in a 4 to 5 month period? Mr. Walwood's answer was probably not. Ms. Johnson, and a further question would be, would you pay fair market value for it, especially for knowing that there would be health and safety concerns that have not been addressed for that property? Mrs. Johnson will step out in her front yard, and instead of being able to watch the sunset over the horizon, that by the grace of God she has been able to do for the last 37 years, will see a grain bunker mounted with grain only several hundred feet from her front porch. Item 6, that is conditioned, a special use permit will comply with all other county codes and regulations. Has the Franklin County Sanitarian visited this site and made an assessment of the site? Has the Emergency Preparedness Director assessed the site and its lack of infrastructure to aid in the event of explosion and fire? We've been provided no information or reports that indicate this has occurred. Item 7, that the subject property is suitable for the proposed use. The location, its distance from a hard surface road, its lack of infrastructure to aid in the event of emergency, the lack of enforceable conditions to ensure the protection of public health, safety, and general welfare all indicate this property is not suitable for the proposed use. It is apparent that the Ottawa Co-op selected this location as a matter of convenience. This is indicated in Mr. Winger's letter dated August 3rd, 2017, where it says in first paragraph, 6th sentence, we began this search at the end of May and determined that the most suitable location would be at our Le Loup facility, since it was already equipped with the necessary items to weigh and grade the grain. Never any mention in that letter of the impact it was going to have on the surrounding area, the surrounding roads, and the safety and welfare of the citizens that live in the path to this facility. Each of the 10 families affected by the proposed facility have voiced their concerns and issues to me, with the highest priority being the health and safety for all. The Johnson families will and have been the most affected. Ms. Johnson has been very emotional in her discussions with the group, with her greatest concern being the health and safety of her grandchildren. The vision of the school bus full of children crossing the bridge, weakened by the heavy truck traffic and collapsing at that moment. The view that the Johnson families, that every day they'll have as they drive out of their driveway and will no longer be able to enjoy what they enjoyed for 37 years. Up till now, no one in the Franklin County government regarding this special use permit appears to care about the surrounding families impacted by this proposed facility. The group hopes this perception changes with your actions today, restoring our faith that the Franklin County government does care about public safety, health, and general welfare. Thank you for your time.
All right, Mr. Finch? Would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I won't take a lot of time. I'll just simply say this. What we didn't hear is that there's any problems with the bridge, with these biannual inspections. You'll note, too, that the legislature passed a 6-axle law in the last legislative session that requires inspection of all those bridges, and the federal government is stepping up bridge inspections as well. What we've not heard is that there's any problems with the bridge that would cause concern. There was a question raised about the accounting. All accounting comes back to the Ottawa Co-op, and so all of that information, financial information, is available here in Ottawa at the Ottawa Co-op. And would just reiterate, I understand there's some dispute about numbers and who and when, but we pulled the 7 residences on Reno in Texas and asked the Register of Deeds for the last deed in the record. And 6 of those 7 are all after the 1987 date. So no dispute that there may be some landowners out there who we did not catch because we weren't going out quite as far in terms of our search, and we didn't include the agricultural properties. We simply focused on residences and then asked Sue for that information. So those are just kind of the highlights. I don't think we heard anything here that is new or different than what the Planning Commission heard on August 6th, so I'll just stand by for questions from you all. And thank you again for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, I imagine we'll go by row. Is there anyone else in the crowd that, I guess, feels they need to add something to what's been discussed, wants to make a comment? Open it up for anyone who wants to add something to public comment. There's one.
I'm Dan Bauer. I live 3947 Reno Road. I live on the north side of Reno Road, and I get my share of dust. I've got no problem with them doing something out there and wanting to improve their facility and stuff, but they're wanting to basically almost triple the number of trucks that go by there now. And I heard Mr. Finch talking about they make more money than it's one of the biggest money makers in the county. They pay more money in taxes and all this kind of stuff. How about taking a little of that money and just putting some decent dust control, give us a decent road, run your trucks, and, do your business. By that facility being out there, he's going to make more money. Otherwise, he wouldn't be putting it out there. If he was going to lose money by putting it out there, he'd put it someplace else. But he can make money by being out there. Every farmer that goes out there will save money because he don't have to run to Edgerton. He doesn't have to go to Ottawa. He doesn't have to go to, Emporia, Harrisonville, or anything like that. Take just a little bit of that and give us a decent road that's safe. You can't see anything out there when them trucks go by. We've got pictures of it. If you guys would like to see them, I can show you just what one truck stirs up and what the yard's like and everything else. Just, help us out a little bit with our roads. Give us something decent and safe. And as far as them saying, well, we broke the law for 30 years, why can't we keep breaking it? I get a ticket if a damn sign has been put up, it's 30 miles an hour this week, and I go 35 or 40, I get a ticket. It's for the day. It's not what we've been doing, it's wrong. The trucks going out there, the dump trucks going out there, they were all illegal according to Kansas law. If you can see aggregate above dirt or aggregate above the rim of the truck, it has to be covered. Not one truck went by that was covered. We sat there and we watched them go by. There was 2,000 tons of rock hauled from the quarry on Tennessee Road that went by my house. And not one truck was covered. They don't care about the law. Every one of them was overweight for the bridge. I went down and talked to the rock quarry down there. The trucks were hauling between 17 and 18 tons apiece. So I don't know what the total truck weighed, 58,000 pounds. It's still a 13-ton bridge. There's a law that says you can't run a 20-ton truck over a 13-ton bridge. Franklin County Sheriff's Department said they couldn't help us because they didn't have a scale. The next stop's going to be, I guess KDOT would be the next move. But, just do something decent with it. That's all I got.
All right, anyone else? If there are none, we'll move to follow-up questions from the board.
One question I have that came up, Mr. Finch addressed that the county was late getting in on, or the, excuse me, co-op was late getting in on the county dust control. So co-op did the next best thing and went out and mixed up their own mixture and put one coat down and was asked to stop. Who asked them to stop?
Clerk Winger, Ottawa Co-op, 302 North Main. I don't know that we were asked to stop. We went out there and put it down, and then we just decided to stop doing any more on that site until the permit was approved. We actually had done all the site prep work, and so after we got to that point, we put down some dust control. I know talking to the neighbors, they didn't feel like it did as good a job as the county had done. Again, we weren't moving anything else out to that site. We haven't done anything out at that site for the most part since then, so there was no need to do anything else out there at this point in time.
Anyone else have questions for the applicants while they're up here?
I have a couple, I guess. I understand that you're an agriculture business, but it's still a commercial business, a profit business, and owned by the co-op members and so forth. Obviously, from what Blaine says of being a good neighbor, you went out and talked to people and so forth. One issue that was mentioned was the condition of the exterior, the existing tanks that are there, the rusting look and so forth. Would not be what I would call impressive to being a good neighbor, whatever else for the looks of those tanks. Also the comment about, from what Blaine told me, it sounded like if we don't put it there, we can't put it anywhere in the county, and I would assume that, no, it's economics again, the most economical for you. And again, if there are other sites that would be much more conducive as far as being on a hard surface road, not so much the traffic would be a problem, but yet it may cost you a lot more money to put it in that location. Those are concerns that I have, that I'm not opposed to what the business is, nor actually am I opposed to where it's at, other than the fact that maybe the decision is based more on economics than it is on looking at the big picture.
Let me see if I can address that. Anytime we're talking about land use law, we're talking about competing interests, right? We're talking about the interest of someone to do what they want to do on their land, subject to the rules and regulations, versus the impact that it may have on the neighbors. You're absolutely right that there may always be a more perfect site for any facility. Whether that be the county annex or whether that be, this grain facility, there's always potentially a better place for something to be. But that's not the question before the county commission, not what is the best site, but whether co-op can do what it is asking to do on this piece of property. And again, I would go back to the comprehensive plan, which favors the agricultural use, even at this location, as opposed to uses that were started after the fact. So when we're balancing, can the landowner do what they want versus what the neighbors want them to do with it, it is relevant and it is an important factor. When did the neighbors come to the party? And in this case, people came to that facility with the grain tanks, with the trucks, with the dust, and still decided to live there in many cases, and now seek to control what the landowner can do with their property and affect their property rights.
The Register of Deeds report says that title's been transferred within that period of time. Could it not have been transferred to a trust, a child, a grandchild, someone in the family?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Could have been. What we got from the Register of Deeds is when the owner now acquired title, the last link in that chain. It could be that they held it differently and
It
had a
could still
different
be a
name.
family farm.
Could be, yeah, could be.
Did the co-op evaluate any other sites on paved roads or make any attempt to acquire?
Yeah, we looked at a couple other sites around there that were available for sale. None of them really matched what we were needing to do, and like you had referenced, we need a scale and grading equipment. We already had an existing facility there, so that facility, and we were able to purchase the land around it. that facility just made the most sense for us to try and put something together before this corn harvest, which is going to be starting any day. Some guys have already started. So time was a big consideration for us as well.
Kind of got indications that this is anywhere from a temporary structure just for this bumper crop, all the way to, I guess, the capacity for storage you need going forward. Which is it? Is it,
Well, what we're building right now would just be considered a temporary structure. It's basically just, we did some groundwork, built up a base, which there is no concrete. It was just rock and ag lime. And then there's a 4-foot wall that is constructed using a conveyor system to put the grain into those walls, and then a tarp is put over the top of it. So it's basically a temporary structure. It can be utilized for multiple years, obviously, but it can also be picked up and moved somewhere else, albeit you'd have to do the groundwork wherever you put it.
but the special use permit, that's for in perpetuity? Is it can we clarify on that?
The special use permit is very similar to zoning itself, and it runs with the land. It's not based on ownership, it just runs with the land. But it's like zoning, it could be subject to change at any time that we modify our zoning regulations, for instance, or at the request of the applicant to change or modify the special use permit. But normally it runs with the land just as a zoning.
But a time limit can be placed on it if,
I'm not aware that those conditions for time are anything that the courts have looked favorably on.
We've never put a time limit on a special use permit. Typically, they run with the land, and the only way they cease to exist conventionally would be if the applicant ceases to use it for that purpose for 1 year, which I believe it states in this itself. But no, there is no express time limit in this, nor is that typical for a special use permit.
The provisions of the granting of that special use permit are typically subject to conditions. If they fail to live with those conditions, then the opportunity comes before the planning commission and the county commissioners to revoke or modify that special use permit. So it's behooving on the applicant to make certain that they are in compliance with whatever conditions are imposed.
I'd like to try and clarify, I guess, how intensely it's being used now and how much more intense the use would be. What is the storage capacity in bushels now?
700,000.
So, and these two, are they 600, I heard both ways, are they 600 bushels each, or cumulatively the two bunkers, 600 bushels?
Each bunker has a
100,000?
600,000 bushel capacity.
Okay,
So the two of them would ultimately be 1.2 million.
okay,
For this year, we've only got one of those,
okay.
is what we're working on. But we would like the opportunity to add another one if this works out and the weather works in our favor and we've got crops like we've seen the last couple of years.
What is the capacity of your tractor trailers to pass a scale? How many bushels can you put on?
Roughly 1,000 bushels.
1,000.
I want to go back, Blaine. You keep bringing up the fact that this zoning things and the law and so forth, legally, we have no right to vote no to. This fits no, I'm just saying, you're saying, though, that it meets all the criteria, and therefore that's our responsibility to see if it meets the requirements and so forth. That legally, they have done whatever it needs to be done. The zoning and planning people have looked at the plan and everything is there. That's what I understood. I mean, that basically, there's no technicality or legal thing that we would have to say, well, this is why it should not be there.
I wouldn't, you have your counselor right here to give you legal advice on that sort of thing. I won't give you legal advice. I'll tell you from the applicant's perspective, and the case that we're attempting to make for you today is to follow those factors and give you the evidence that we believe falls under each of those factors to support a decision of saying yes today. And we believe there is evidence under each of those factors that would support a yes decision today.
I understand that, and again, I would refer back to what Mr. Stoneking mentioned, that it seemed like on this side of the coin, it's like we have done everything the right way, but yet who cares about a 13-ton bridge? We'll just run whatever we want to run over those bridges. That seems to be the attitude. And Mr. Winger did explain to me that some of those trucks are not their trucks. Just like all those trucks hauling rock up there are not their trucks. That's not their, some other company is doing the business, outside contractors, that they have no control over those. I understand that. But I still think that they can be there. These people bought the land or have lived on the land not knowing that it's going to triple the amount of capacity of trucks and so forth. So that's a little bit of a difference, saying that they knew that going up front. I don't think they knew going up front what would develop there eventually. And if the co-op is going to be a good neighbor, then I think that's an obligation that I would hope that they would do, because obviously it's a farming community, a farming area, and those are farming people. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I see that the give and take is there, that we can make this work. Mr. Bowers made some comments, and what I see from Mr. Bowers' comments, I think you're right. It's not in the special use permit. The Franklin County will have to decide what we have to do to maintain the roads, to maintain the safety, to do those things, and obviously there's a cost affiliated with that to do that. What are the number of trucks that run over there, the amount of gravel we put on, the bridge wear, whatever else it may be, we will need to do that. And if we need to do other things to provide for safety, emergency vehicles and whatever else, then obviously the county is going to be doing that. And it may be because, yes, we want the co-op, we want the business in Franklin County, we want to take care of the people in Franklin County, including our farmers.
I would agree with you, Commissioner. I'd say that was kind of the point of the comment earlier about taxes, is that co-op is a sizable taxpayer in the county, and they help defray all of those costs, and they are a participant in that. And they, again, they don't want to do anything that's going to negatively affect that. Nobody wants their taxes to go up. They don't want to cut off emergency access, and if emergency access is cut off by some driver, that is a law enforcement issue. And the sheriff should be notified immediately, and that should be taken care of in the appropriate fashion. I think everyone at the co-op would agree with that. The problem that we're having a little bit is that now all of a sudden, all of the evils that can be dreamed up are being placed upon this applicant when the use has been going on for 30 years. And we haven't had school buses catching on fire and plunging into a swollen creek, and we haven't had grain bins exploding, and we haven't had bridges collapsing at this location, or ambulances unable to get through. And yet today, now suddenly the standard has changed, and all of these things are alleged to be just right around the corner. And so that's why we tried to focus back on the factors and focus in on those things that we know to be true and what we've seen from experience. So it is not in any way to say that we want to shuffle costs onto someone else. Whatever costs there are for this site and any site around the county are going to be borne in part, and in a significant part, by the co-op and its constituent members.
You've indicated the co-op would be open to applying or paying to apply dust control in front of residences?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we made that offer to the owners out there when we met with them.
My question is, you've missed the deadline for this year, and corn harvest would start soon if this were to be approved. Would this be something that the co-op would go back then and be willing to treat these roads in advance of the harvest and the crops being brought into the site, so that we don't have the dust problem? And then I know you're signed up for next year, but that's another question. Is you have the fall, you have the removal. There could be a period of time in there where that control measure could lapse and may not be as good a coverage too, and that may be something that you can address, Mr. Winger.
Well, obviously, I would prefer to have the county do it, because when I went out there and did it, the neighbors weren't happy with the job we did. But I'm more than willing to use our resources to go out and treat those neighbors 300 feet now, with the time when we're going to unload the bins or load the bins, whatever that situation would be. I'm more than willing to do that, to bridge the gap until the county can do it next May. I believe the sign up is in March, and then they do the treatment in May or June, and the way I understand it, they only do that one time a year.
Well, unless the county's been there since I've been there, those roads right now, nobody's gonna drive very fast on them anyway, and they're gonna be blading them. You put a dust control down, they've got a lot of work on those roads to blade back, so, unless that's happened in the last week that I'm not aware of, so.
I have one thing to say. I'm an member of the Ottawa Co-op, and my question is, how soon would this facility be ready if we approve it?
We could get it ready in 7 to 10 days to be able to take corn in that bunker.
The next question is, it came up, Mr. Stone King, was about like dust explosions or something like that happening.
Normally, well,
Controls you have.
this is an open structure, so the chances of an explosion, normally your grain explosions happen where you've got a confined space and the dust is contained within a confined space. This is just a pile on the ground, so there's no confined space in regards to this type of a structure.
But you'll cover it and have fans blowing after it's filled, right?
Do what now?
You'll have it covered and then fans
Yes,
blowing?
as soon as it gets filled up, or if we get to a point where there's a weather situation, we can cover it, cover whatever is there. And yes, once it is filled up, it gets covered up with the tarp, and then our priority is to try and get it emptied out as soon as possible as well.
The rotted grain that has been referenced is controlled not by co-op, but by state law. Is that not correct?
Sure. So traditional with a facility like this, you can see around a 1% loss. So 600,000 bushels, you'd be talking about 6,000 bushels potentially that could be lost in this situation. That has to be loaded up in a truck and hauled off to a landfill.
I imagine if we approve this, there'd be some, or possibly be some stipulations added. We address the dust control or somewhat. Would that be, I guess, what you're willing to apply just within the 1,000 feet, or would that include, like, for instance, the 1.5 miles of Reno Road east from Tennessee Road? Like, to actually connect to where you would logically be going?
Right.
And-
Our preference would be, and typically the legislature and courts have kind of prescribed this 1,000-foot radius from the property, and those are the people who get notice to come in. And we think it makes logical sense to limit the dust control to that area because those are the neighbors who have been notified and asked to come in and present to you today. They're also the neighbors who are calculated for purposes of the protest petition. Obviously, if the county commission has a different idea, we're open to talking about that. We thought it made logical sense to utilize the 1,000-foot radius. Some of those neighbors are to the north. Ms. Johnson, for instance, is north of the entrance to this facility, and we've still talked with her about doing dust control, but she is within the 1,000-foot. So,
But technically, Blaine, excuse me for interrupting you, but actually 100% of those trucks loaded should come in from the north and go out from the north if they're loaded.
They may, yeah.
So
Should.
I think the most dust, and obviously the two main route is from Tennessee to Texas on Reno, but you go north on Utah from I-35 to Shawnee. There's 2 houses, 3 houses on that. That, to me, is going to have even as much, if not more, or at least loaded trucks on that stretch of road. And that's, a mile away maybe, but that's almost exclusively the way the roads, the trucks will go. I guess they could come back from Utah south back to Reno again, but I know a lot of them are going to go north to the hard surface road.
and I think Riley goes up and curls around to the right. It truly is a question, almost like doing a remodel on your home. Where do you stop?
And right, but and again, it might be we need to do a traffic study with the county and really seeing where the trucks are going and how they're being routed. But even your truck drivers are not going to be safe if they're meeting other truck drivers in dust areas for them.
Yeah.
So it's not just other people that you have to be,
And I don't know, Commissioner, what the accident history is in that area as we've had.
Well, if we're doing 300 feet, I don't know the cost of that is, but 3 houses, 4 houses. Yes, I know when you get to 20 houses or 30 houses, it adds up. But at the same time, The 1,000 feet to me is not as much as where the trucks are.
Sure. I think we've identified, I think in my survey, about 6 houses that are within the area. You've got, I think, 15 owners. Mr. Walrod and I were just talking about that. You've got 15 owners. Some of them are duplicates. There's one trust that has 3 parcels within there. I think they're all ag. But yes, I mean, again, we thought the logical stopping point was the 1,000-foot radius because that's the number that's always utilized in these situations. If there's another idea, we're open to it. I think covering houses miles away from people who aren't even here to tell you that they're concerned would probably be beyond what we think is reasonable in this circumstance, but we're certainly happy to take a look at whatever it is you all want to take a look at.
Some other possibilities, rodent control, which you implied you'd be doing anyways, or?
Ecolab is the co-op's vendor, and they use them at all your facilities.
All of our locations.
And then ways you would plan on mitigating noise.
Yeah, so the main noise with the bunker would be the fans that really holds the tarp down. So they would only be running when the grain was full and it was tarped down to hold that tarp down. We decided to put those fans on the west side, which somewhat has an effect on the noise level. So I know Shirley Johnson is right across that road, so that was part of our consideration to put them on the opposite side, facing the rest of our property and the tree line out there to the west.
Any other questions for the applicants while they're up here? None? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Larry? Did you get a chance to discuss the comprehensive plan? Didn't think you did.
Well, I think it's been pretty well discussed subsequent to my mission, but I did want to advise the county commissioners that the comprehensive plan is comprised of 4 elements. What we've heard today was just issues relative to the policies associated with each of the various land uses. It didn't talk about the future land use map, which depicts the uses that would be anticipated as a part of that. In this case, the comprehensive plan shows this as rural, not commercial. So the policies associated with the, excuse me, I'm a little short of breath because I have a little lung cancer issue, but anyway, those policies for commercial are sites that would be potentially developed for all kinds of commercial uses. We would have that at the intersection, for instance, of Tennessee and I-35. But what we have here is rural land use, agriculture, and rural residential. So I wanted to make certain that you had the understanding that you can't just take one item out of the comprehensive plan and apply that in all situations.
All right.
If I could add on to that, whether or not you guys should approve this, I have absolutely no opinion on. That is what the 5 of you are elected to do. That's your decision. However, what is legal versus illegal, I have a very strong opinion on. And if you were to pass this today and an objection was made, the next step would be in the District Court of Franklin County. And I can tell you, in the District Court of Franklin County, I am very, very confident that your decision, should you choose to approve, would be upheld, because this is consistent with our comprehensive plan. And a judge is a human being, and we're unpredictable as human beings, so I can't guarantee anything, but it's as close to a slam dunk as I'm probably ever going to see. Like, this is not illegal. Again, whether or not you should do it, that's your decision, but it is consistent with our comprehensive plan.
have a question for Larry again.
Why don't you sit down next to Derek, Larry? There's no sense standing up here.
Thank you.
In the special uses that are granted, Larry, under section 15, it says, "Such other uses which are not listed as special use, but which are determined by the planning commission to be in keeping with the intent of these zoning regulations and are deemed to be compatible with the uses permitted by this article." Is that to incorporate the fact that you simply cannot cover everything, Larry?
That was the anticipation, that there is always new things coming down the line that you never expected, and you have not included those as an activity in order to ever get them before you or the planning commission. You'd have to go back then and amend your zoning regulations to specifically address that new.
It wasn't an attempt within that section of A1 to exclude the storage. It just wasn't envisioned, and this was part of something that was compatible within that under a special use.
It is not only compatible, but I think an integral part of it, because it's very, very difficult to be producing something and having it offered for sale on the property without having it stored.
Okay.
The exception to that might be livestock,
Right.
but, you know, as far as other products that are agriculture, it would be an integral part of the operation, right?
And Commissioner Oglesby, to add to that, clauses such as the one you were referencing are very, very common. You will see those in statutes across a wide sector of laws, and it's because statutes are already thousands of pages. If you tried to anticipate every possible thing, they would be millions of pages, and then people already don't like paying attorneys. At that point, you would be paying us to interpret millions of pages of statutes, and that's just not feasible. So it's not meant as a provision to allow everything. I mean, common sense still rules the day, but that's where you have to interpret those things, so.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for staff? Any questions for the organized opposition? All right, that'd bring us to, I guess, deliberating and voting. I'd caution, maybe it's a little help from Derek here, but we do need 3/4, so 4 out of 5 to affirm this for it to be upheld. Keep that in mind. I'd hate for somebody to jump out and say, I make a motion, we approve as is, because if, say, 1 or 2 other commissioners say, well, I would have voted for it if it included this provision, but I won't vote for it as is. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. That's my understanding, and it's dead. So I would hate for this process to have to go all the way back because one, albeit large, small, whatever, concession wasn't made. So with that, I'd certainly say we have a need to debate this, deliberate it, and work together to, if there is a will to approve this, put together a motion that I guess satisfies us all, so we don't paint ourselves into a corner parliamentary procedural wise.
Right, and I appreciate you saying that, Colt, and I think that was excellent. Having said that, though, if you want to add conditions, I'm not sure that I would ask that you make any motion today, because Larry and I aren't going to chicken scratch some things on this resolution and get it back in front of you now. It would basically be you provide us with direction. You can send it back to the Planning Commission if you want. You don't have to. You can direct us. We can add your conditions, bring the resolution with the added conditions back before you, and approve it at a later date. But certainly, yes,
I would have to imagine that co-op and their representatives would prefer that, as much time as they have invested in this, and I guess money as well. So that, all right.
Right. And then the other thing, if you will oblige me, Chair, is Roy, you mentioned having an interest in co-op, and out of an abundance of caution, and I researched this prior to this meeting, what is the nature of your interest in the co-op?
I'm an owner member of the co-op for many years.
What does that mean? an owner member.
Well, farmer, producer, and I use the co-op for
Okay.
grain.
And you own certain shares, is that how that works?
Yeah, part of it's
Okay.
minimal shares.
Minimal shares, and you're not on any kind of board of directors?
Not on board of directors or any other connection with the co-op except being a member.
Well, and to be clear, the law would mandate that if you own a substantial interest, you have to disclose. I don't think you own a substantial interest, and you have disclosed anyway, so you legally are free to vote on this issue, because you wouldn't be legally held to have a conflict of interest at that point. Just wanted that clarified for your constituents and anyone who may be listening here. So with that being said, please discuss and let us know what we can do to help.
The only provision I really see that keeps coming up is the dust control. I read your paperwork you gave us, Mr. Stone King. I also drove out to the property to look it over. I tried to do my homework on this. I looked at the roads and the bridge and so forth. I talked to Mr. Haig about the roads and how he felt that whether we could handle the roads and keeping them maintained, and he advised that we've maintained others with heavier truck use than this one, and he can also address this if he wishes to. So, and I understand your concerns, but the thing, like I said, I keep seeing coming up is mainly just the dust control. As far as the bridge, if it's being used by overweight trucks, maybe we need to look at getting the sheriff department a scale so they can enforce that, if that's the case, or so forth. I mean, that's not the co-op's responsibility, I don't feel, and maybe that's something we'll need to look at down the road, enforcing that if it's being done. But like I say, the only thing I keep really seeing coming up is the dust control.
Would you consider the speed limit a part of dust control? The slower the vehicle, the less dust you get?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I would think.
We're talking dust control.
If you're
Dust
running-
control, I think you have to address the speed limit.
If you're running 15, you're not going to kick up as much as 80.
That's exactly correct.
And I would encourage the board, the county engineer is in the room, and questions about bridge weights and tolerances and how to implement a potential speed limit. Jim is a resource that hasn't been tapped yet, so certainly direct any questions in that regard to him, should you have them.
Again, I go back to the special use permit is already lined out. There's things not in there that I would have loved to seen in there, but there are things that the county can do on its own, not associated with, this, like the speed limit. We can do that regardless. It doesn't have to be in the special use permit. I think there is a special use permit issued by another county that specifically put dust control in that. This one doesn't have it, so it's back to the county again, unless you made a statement. I'm not sure what, just before that's about how the motion would read, or what you said about.
If you guys want added conditions, I would request you don't make a motion, you just collectively, and we've done this before, where you guys collectively, you don't take action, you just give me guidance. I take your guidance, I implement it, bring it back to you for formal action. So if the 5 of you or a majority of you believe that we need to add a condition for dust control, let us know. We'll go back, we'll add it, we'll bring to you a new resolution with new conditions, and at that time, you will take the formal action of approving it. What we need is, if you're not going to approve this piece of paper as it exists today, we need to know exactly what you want in here so that we can add that and bring it back to you.
You're saying you can do that without going back to the zoning board?
You can. If you want it to go back to the zoning board, you absolutely can remand it back there, but you don't have to at this point.
Well, for the co-op, time is critical. So are you talking 1 week?
2, probably.
But they approved it as is, why would we remand it to them, I guess, with,
Yeah.
there's, I mean, logic tells you they found it okay as is, why would they not find it okay with an even more critical eye on it, more stipulations. I don't see that point in that. So is there a way to, I do have I guess, an issue with potentially sending trucks over a bridge we know, if you're gonna, know isn't adequate. If we're gonna, say, for instance, you need dust control between Tennessee and Texas, you're more or less saying wink, wink. I know you won't use the bridge illegally, though. Is there a way to legally get a fully loaded truck out of there to the interstate? I assume using Texas to Riley Road would do that, and then catching 33?
I believe so. But
33?
Going north on Texas and east over to Utah, north to Shawnee. It does require some out of distance travel, but they would be crossing, the only bridge then would be the bridge over the interstate on Utah and the bridge just south of Shawnee on on Tennessee, south of Shawnee.
I guess to be fair, though, because despite Mr. Stone King's statements, we do care about our constituents. Everything we do is designed to take the best possible care of them. What are the weight limits on these bridges? Because I don't have an interest in punting this onto a different group of landowners, because we're trying to do what's best for the collective population. So what are the limits on those bridges?
The bridge on Utah is over the I-35 and was constructed by KDOT to handle any legal load. There's no posting on it.
All right.
And then you mentioned another bridge.
There's a bridge on Tennessee just south of Shawnee. I don't have that information.
But you can get it.
Yes?
Just whatever we do, Chair Waymeyer, I want to make sure we're not just shifting some kind of burden unnecessarily.
Sure. If we did, as we did like with the asphalt plant, they have to come in a certain way and out a certain way so that we don't put undue burden on neighbors. I guess it would make sense if we're going to send traffic that direction that's where we're going to mandate dust control to be. So like you say, we don't shift the burden to someone down the street.
But, again, the county could put a load limit on a road, a truck limit, or no trucks on this road, or whatever it is. Anything in the special use permit to the auto co-op, it's not their trucks. When a farmer comes out of his field, he's not a co-op, and the people that are contracted hauling it out. Our county that hauls the rock and the dump bellies, I mean.
Well, they at least they haul their own grain out, and that'll be 50% of the loads right there. No, we can't mandate the individual farmers.
Well, they have contractors haul out too, that's not always an auto co-op truck hauling it out, from what I was told.
Be a condition of their contract to obey the special use permit.
I mean, a special use permit, if it's only gonna apply to the Ottawa co-op, that doesn't solve the issue. I would think outside of the special use permit, where the county just posts whatever regulations we post for everybody. I don't care if you're.
Part of the reason we're so tolerant farmers in our overall plan is because it's a use spread out among the entire area of the county. Hauling the grain out is intensive. It's every ton on or bushel on there will be touched and will be hauled away in one direction. So that's 50%. But the 50% coming in could come from any variety of directions. Could come from north, south, east, west. It's not as intense of a use, and it's over harvest, a longer period of time. And again, we can't mandate what. I mean, that's what load rules and rules of the road are for. But we can't mandate everything. So.
But you certainly, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. If you want to elect, a route that co-op or its contractors need to take to enter and leave the site, you can absolutely do that. We have done it in Bettis, and as you've pointed out, at the very least, that greatly reduces the burden on the bridges, which.
I just have I guess, a hard time, like I say, obviously going down to Reno and catching Tennessee is the logical way, but to knowingly put trucks that are heavier than the bridge, and know that Well, we're dust controlling that road for a reason, because it's gonna be used by,
Do we have any current information on that bridge status?
Just preliminary information from the inspection this year. Doesn't indicate any difficulties with the 10x8 bridge that's there.
is the, I guess it's getting a little off topic, but that bridge is inspected, I guess, giving known or assumed parameters, the quality of the concrete, the mix. Is there any testing we could do to verify that it is capable of handling the extra load and get it certified for a higher tonnage?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So, staff needs direction if we are interested in approving this. What conditions? I've talked way too much. Would the rest of us, if there's an interest in approving, what would you need to see attached to approve it? We can go down the list.
And once you've arrived at that, obviously, I mean, the co-op still has to have the interest in pursuing this. So
Absolutely.
while they're in the room, certainly I would, once you guys have what you think, let's invite Blaine or Clark back up to have that discussion.
You bet. I know this is taking time and it's maybe frustrating, but
Mr. Chairman, I really believe that we need to have some kind of control for the dust included in that. And I'm not sure, Jim might have better information as to the amount of trucks and traffic and maintenance that may require, whether that one spraying in the spring would be sufficient come harvest time and removal time in the winter to control the amount of dust that we're talking about.
You would anticipate in the winter that frozen down, usually dust is not a concern. We traditionally apply it in the spring and reserve the right following September 15th to maintain the roads even though the dust control is present.
it'd be graded. It'd be
Yes, it'd
turned
be
over.
graded.
Which would,
With continued applications over multiple years, there is a residual effect. So if you blade it when there's moisture present, for example, it tends to heal back. But you're not going to get 12 months control under duress.
so that you would necessitate
It's going
another.
to chuck, gravel roads chuck hole under traffic, under speed. You lose a ton per mile per vehicle a year.
So we would need another treatment in fall,
Possibly, yes.
most likely, to get our desired result. I guess, is there an interest in first requiring the traffic exiting, hauling out loads, use the Texas to Riley Road, north on Utah to the hard surface road?
I don't think that's practical. I think they're gonna take the easiest route in and out, besides rerouting all the way.
Well, coming in would be up to the driver. I mean, if they want to do something illegal, like speed or go over a bridge that's not adequate, that's their prerogative, done at risk. But coming out, we do have the ability to set perimeters.
I'm in favor of dust control for the co-op up to 12 residences, to be determined by the traffic on the road, based on the county, that they would not be required to do more than 12 residents, 12 times 300 feet, or whatever it is. In fact, a couple of those houses are probably directly across from each other. And I'm thinking of what the route you just said, going up from Riley to Shawnee, or on Utah. I count no more than 12 houses. They would never be required for more than 12 houses.
And here's the other thing to think about, and I would encourage, I understand the situation that the co-op's in. I understand that. I understand they want to put this facility in play and start using it, but we are all in a better spot, the Board of Commissioners, the co-op, the landowners, if we take our time and we do this right. And so I think it might be hard to sit here in this room, because I don't know how many houses are on this alternate route. I haven't driven the alternate route. I don't know what the load capacity of the bridges on the alternate route might be. Like, we're just gonna need time, I think, to go vet some of these things. The co-op's I'm gonna need to work with their attorney to decide if it's even agreeable to them to do some of this. It's gonna be hard, I guess it's going to be hard for me to encourage you to implement very specific conditions when we're not sure exactly of what the situation out there is at this time.
I think you've heard enough, I guess, from all of us that there is a definite need for dust control.
Dust control, yes.
The, a route that is responsible and, I guess, considers the ability of the roads, the capacity of them and the bridges. I'd hope you could work with co-op on that and look at your options and then get information from Jim.
So I guess
Bring something back to us.
Yeah, and this also something that we could bring back to a study session to discuss if that were something the board was interested in. But so I'm hearing dust control, perhaps multiple treatments. I don't know if there's more Jim needs to look at to determine if that is what is needed. And then what I think I'm getting from, and it basically needs to be 4 of you because we've got a protest petition, but you want us to look into alternate routes and whether or not we can impose a mandatory exit route if there is a way to do that without overburdening bridges. Is that, I'm seeing one nod, is that?
The thing of it is, will that create a greater problem on what we already have?
Well, that's what
Yeah, that's,
we're looking at.
that would be my concern about that. Because now you're gonna be putting a lot more trucks in some areas that are gonna be maybe more than a mile or 1,000 feet for sure, but you know.
Which is exactly why we
Yeah.
would need to look at the roads we're talking about. We would need to talk to co-op about whether it's just at that point, if it becomes impractical for them, then, you know, obviously that's their prerogative, so.
Sure.
Well, it's 2 weeks before we have a study session, and if you could get it worked out before next week, I would think that, I mean, we've talked and talked already. I mean, I don't know. I know what you say about let's do it right. Rob, we got a chance to do it right, but you're looking at, you know, time is a factor too. But whatever they want to do, whatever the commissioners, I'm just giving you my opinion, but I'm not.
I think we have enough and we've also mentioned rodent control, removing, you know, spoiled grain, and positioning the fans to mitigate noise control. I'd hope that anything that came back to us would include that. There's just so many unknown variables, and I think we need to kick it back to staff and co-op's representatives to come up with a proposal that includes some of those concerns, and we can consider it then. But
Dust control, the alternate route, removing spoiled grain, rodent control, positioning fans for noise control. These are all things we'll look at, though I do think their permit from KDHE covers some of this.
I do
but there's
too.
nothing precluding us from, I mean, it would be redundant, but it's fine to have it in there nevertheless. They're gonna do it anyway. Is there anything else you want us to look at while?
Would speed limit come outside of that, could be outside of that, right? We could do that outside of, if that was ever something the county wanted to do.
all right. So would you need a motion to table this?
You can. I mean, you can make a motion to continue this for 2 weeks. I don't know that you necessarily have to. But if you're going to, I would include a specific date that we are continuing it to.
All right.
And you are without your counselor and administrator a week from today, so I would encourage you to.
Do you need to talk to us, then, or can you talk to Derek, or? Yeah, go for it. bathroom.
Yeah, so if you,
Table it till the 20th. Continue it. All right, is there a motion to continue this item till the 20th of September? Is there a motion to continue this item till the 20th of September?
I make a motion that we continue this item till the 20th.
Is there a second? Heard no comments so far about what anybody wants to do, so somebody's gonna have to get off the fence and make a second, or be for or against. I'll second it.
Well, before you do, my.
Motion in a second, it's time to vote.
Then fine, go for it.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
No.
Chair Howard? Commissioner Waymire? Commissioner Howard, sorry. Chair Waymire?
Yes, I vote to continue, or to take, so it failed to,
no, I think the protest petition
all right, this is for the actual
mandates
permit.
that to approve, you have to have 4 affirmative votes. You're continuing, which is not you're not taking action on the item today,
All right.
so you can continue.
Okay. Let's take a 5-minute recess.
Can we make it 10?
10-minute recess. Is there a motion?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. All right, I will reconvene our meeting. As I understand, we have a tourism item on here, and our tourism director needs to go somewhere. I think I'm going to move her up to the next item of business. That'd be number 10, to consider for approval a charter resolution disbanding and reforming the Conventioners and Visitors Tourism Committee.
Yes, this is something that we discussed, I believe, at our last meeting. We currently have a charter resolution that has created a 12-member tourism committee. After discussion, we have decided that that's too many folks. However, the statute mandates that it's a 10-member committee, half of which have to be in the tourism industry. They have to be appointed by the board. This is the charter resolution that implements that. Obviously, we don't have the board members in place today, but this would implement the framework, which would be a 10-member board. As the resolution states, a majority of the board members, or of the committee, rather, I'm using the wrong vernacular, the committee members, a majority have to be representatives of businesses that fall within convention and tourism. Probably ask that, at least maybe a commissioner sit on the committee. You would appoint the committee, and the terms would be staggered, but in no event would they be for more than 4 years. So what this charter resolution does is it revokes or rescinds the 12-member committee, creates the 10-member committee, and it leaves everything else tourism-related alone. So if you have any questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I would look for a motion approving this charter.
Questions, comments? Anyone want to make a motion?
Make the motion.
Second.
Commissioner Oglesby?
I have a question first.
Okay?
The resolution is to form the,
It's to disband and form.
okay, that's what I wanted to make sure, that it
We're
disbanded
disbanding
and formed
one,
the new.
and we're forming the new.
Okay, I vote yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Chair Waymire?
Yes.
Okay, and with that being said, during our recess, and I've asked the opponents of the co-op to stick around, a couple of commissioners indicated that they would have liked to have potentially voted on this issue today. If that is the case, you could make a motion to reconsider tabling it or continuing it for 2 weeks, put it back on the agenda today, and then if you bump it to the bottom of the agenda, I'll talk with their counsel, and we can try to hash out some language that might be suitable to the board. So what I would need right now.
Parliamentary procedure dictates those who voted in the affirmative can.
Yes.
Yes, can
So-
reconsider.
So yes. So if those of you who wanted to table it wish to,
If that's-
reconsider that and
There's
put
an
it.
interest in that, you'll spend your time maybe
Absolutely.
working
I will
something out.
work
so
with
that-
their counsel and we'll see what we can get put together by the end of the meeting here.
You can get a good plan put together. I'd be willing to make that motion, so.
Okay, is there a second?
Would there be potentially a second?
A second.
You would? All right. So
So you would like me to call a vote just of the 3 that voted yes, or all 5?
You need a vote later? I mean, I just said I'd be willing to. Do you need a vote now to
Yeah.
reconsider it?
Yes,
Okay.
well, just to get it back on the agenda for today, and then we will put it at the end of the agenda after the rest of Larry's items.
I'll make that motion. Okay. All right. I believe.
You can call them all, Janet.
Okay. Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Chair Waymeyer?
Yes. All right. Second item of business is a rezoning application, and that's with Larry.
As you've indicated, Mr. Chairman, this is a request to rezone approximately 8.2 acres from a highway commercial zoning district to the RE residential estate zone. This site is the site of the old Sand Creek Nursery, and they have opted to utilize that now for residential purposes. The C2 zone does not allow for residences. It was to be used exclusively for commercial business uses. And we have such little amount of that scattered throughout the county. That was one of the conditions that was inherent in the adoption of our regulation, was to reserve those sites exclusively for commercial. They no longer have an interest for that commercial activity, so they are going to construct a new residence on that particular site. And therefore, in order to do that, they had to rezone it. The Planning Commission at their meeting last month did consider this matter and have forwarded a recommendation to the county commissioners to approve the rezoning from the C2 to the RE residential estate. And that would be based on the findings, and further that you would direct staff to amend the official zoning map accordingly.
What happens to the structure that's there?
Most of those are fairly temporary.
Okay.
The office part of that is probably the only substantial part. The rest of it's more or less temporary types of structures. I think that aerial photo that's attached as a part of your staff report pretty much shows those Quonset-type buildings. Most of those are canvas or plastic of some kind for nursery purposes, so they're not.
Someone wouldn't be able to move into the office and start using it as a home. It would
No.
still have to meet,
There will have to be some modifications done to do that. But it's my understanding they intend just to clear it and then build a new home.
I see. All right. Is there a motion to approve the rezoning application 1706-1491?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chair Waymeyer?
Yes. Third item of business is also a rezoning application. I'll let Larry introduce the item.
Mr. Chairman, this is a request to rezone approximately 20 acres from an agricultural zone, A1 zone, to the A2 zone. This parcel that they're acquiring has sufficient acreage to warrant going into the A2 transitional agricultural zone because it's 20 acres. But however, less than 40, so it had to be rezoned to the appropriate zoning district. There is an existing residence on it, as shown on the aerial photo that's attached as part of your staff report. It includes the 20 acres and how that would be arranged. And you can see the remainder of that then will be continue to be used for agricultural purposes. The Planning Commission did consider this matter at their meeting last month and have forwarded a recommendation to you to approve the rezoning from A1 to A2 and direct staff to amend the official county zoning map accordingly.
Questions, comments? Motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, we approve rezoning application 1706-1504 to rezone 20 acres from A1 to A2.
Second it.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chair Waymire?
Yes. Our fourth item of business is a rezoning application number 1707-1512, Mousen.
This request is to rezone approximately 6 acres from an agricultural zone to the RE residential estate zoning district. We have reviewed this in accordance with the provisions set forth in our comprehensive plan and found that it would meet and satisfy the lot length to width ratio, the lot frontage that's required, and the Planning Commission, after reviewing the staff report together with the information that was provided at the public hearing, has submitted a recommendation that the county commissioners adopt a resolution approving the rezoning to rezone the 6 acres from an A1 to the RE residential estate zone. As you can see on the aerial photo, it's attached as part of your staff report. There is an existing residence that is served by a lagoon system, and that lagoon system, of course, would require a little larger parcel size than what would typically be found in a lot of our residential zoning districts. And it does satisfy and meet that particular criteria. We did have a couple of people that were opposed. Those were landowners to the north of this, and they felt that it was a situation that was going to have some detrimental impact. I don't think they understood that there's already an existing residence to the old John Brown School, historic school site that was north across the road from this property. But other than that, that was the only opposition that was expressed at the meeting. I have nothing further to add unless any of you have questions on this.
Questions for Larry? Someone like to make a motion to approve rezoning application 1707-1512?
Make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Chair Waymire?
Yes. Item of business listed as number 5 in your agenda packet is rezoning application 1706-1501, Kilo.
This is a request that was submitted by John Kello. I think that most of you are aware of his current operations out on the old 50 highway north of the city. It was the old stockyards for quite a number of years.
59, right?
59, excuse me. Thank you. Anyway, John purchased this after they had flooding of his previous site, which was located within the urban growth area for the city. This was out on, I think, Wilson's, where it flooded a few years ago in 2007. He acquired this site in 2008. At that time, this site was under the jurisdiction of the city, under the urban growth area and the interlocal agreement. The city had rezoned that site to a mixed land use, was a mixed commercial and industrial. And John felt that he would like to use this more in line with an industrial type use that would accommodate his business as well as some recycling. So there's a related matter that comes on following this particular item. But first, we had to address the rezoning, and he felt it was appropriate then to have the zoning issue addressed to get this into a zoning district that permitted the activities that he anticipated with the recycling and the fact that he was storing a lot of materials that was acceptable under the mixed use classification that the city had, but was not going to be consistent with the provisions we have in our zoning regulations as a commercial land use. So the first thing we had to do was try to rezone this to where it was consistent and compatible with the activities that were currently being done, as well as the activities that Mr. Kello had projected for future use on this property. After considering this, the Planning Commission did agree, and they have recommended to you to rezone the property from the C2 to the heavy industrial, the I2 zoning district. The property is, as you can see on the aerial photo that's attached as a part of your staff report, includes property on both sides of the railroad track. Their offices and their shop building are located there on the immediately on the east side of Old 59, and the area for the special use permit will be on the remaining acreages on the east side of the railroad. And we have, I think there were some photos, I don't know whether they were all attached as a part of your report, but there were aerial photos that did show the activities that were presently being conducted on that particular property. But the Planning Commission has recommended that you adopt a resolution approving the rezoning and direct staff to amend our current zoning maps accordingly.
Any questions, comments?
In short, Larry, this corrects what's an existing condition that's left over from the previous urban growth district that was allowed, correct?
Yes. But you'll see that their operation generally involves a lot of construction material, and they bring that construction material from the sites that they're working on quite often to this location. Well, that's not a permitted use in the RC2 zone. So the first issue here was to get it into an appropriate zoning district. And the second one is will be the next item on your agenda would be the special use permit.
Was there any opposition?
There was some concern, again, about whether this would have an impact on some of the other developments that are out there. And I think that there was not a sufficient concern, since there was no real traffic that's going adjacent to them other than on the highway. So that pretty much eliminated their biggest concerns, particularly with the fact that the special use permit carries conditions, but that's on the next matter. But as far as the rezoning, there wasn't any real opposition to the rezoning.
Primarily, most of that is not visible from the highway.
It's not very visible, but they're going to be placing some additional berms on the east side of the railroad track to make it even more, I guess, enclosed to where it's not visible, even for some of the adjoining properties. So that was one of the concerns that was raised as for the special use permit, but it didn't come up on the zoning issue.
All right. Is there a motion to approve rezoning application 1706-1501?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Chair Waymire?
Yes. And this brings us to the special use permit application for Kilo.
This was a related matter that, to the item you just heard. And as I indicated, there are a number of pictures, I think, that are showing the activities that are currently being done on the properties associated with the special use permit. This site is located on the east side of the railroad tracks. And the planning commission did feel that they have mitigated with the conditions the issues that were raised by some of the adjoining property owners concerning the application for the special use permit for the recycling of this construction material. And I think the applicant is present if you have any real specific questions, but it's my understanding that they will not be doing any real crushing of that material. John can explain in a little more detail how they will be utilizing that material, but the brick, the used brick, is placed on pallets and removed from the site, and any asphalt materials that would happen to be associated with won't be dumped here. They'll be taken to the asphalt plant that John operates on Sand Creek. So after reviewing this, the Planning Commission has recommended approval subject to the findings and the conditions that are set in the draft resolution that's part of your packet. I have nothing further to add, and John is here to address any concerns you may have.
Concerns? Anybody have any questions?
So what does happen with the large chunks of concrete then, or how are they reclaimed, or they're not crushed on site? I mean,
Well, no, they will be crushed on site.
Come on up if you would.
Basically, the materials that come in, which around this area, there's not all that much. By the way, I'm John Kilo, 3633, 59 Highway. Majority of it won't be breaker, it'll be more of a hydraulic cruncher, they call them. You know, just a huge backhoe it just separates the metal, and then the rest will be probably be sorted. You know, the bigger chunks might be used for like riprap, and there will be a process, not very often during the year, but of crushing it down to whatever's left. Might be limestone. There's some piles out there that I like to just, but it'll be run through a crusher into a base rock, basically.
You bring in a mobile crusher once or twice a year to...
Well, yeah, it'd just be a crusher sitting there. It's just, it's a rock crusher, but it's made for crushing whatever. But we'll have to separate all that. But there's really not enough material that comes around this area to create a whole. We create the piles, and I want these piles will be gone once we start the process. But like we sort, a lot of that stuff will be the big rocks that you see around our property. We save all those, and for people who want them for landscaping, and we do have brick that have come off of streets that we repallet, and people put them, you know, we sell them all over, and that's kind of what we're doing back there. But it's, you know.
I got one question, John, number 9, just being this seems to be a big topic today. How do you maintain dust control on this when you're doing this? Actually,
the dust control that the property owners, which, by the way, we're out there, our office is there, and we want to control it too, and I've addressed it with them, and there won't be a whole lot of dust back there. The dust is actually our daily operation, I think, is what and I've talked to them, and we actually want to do a better job of controlling that ourselves, because it blows right into our office, and water, you know, obviously we're in the asphalt business, so eventually we might do some of that too, but we have the capabilities of keeping it sprayed down daily during those periods.
And you've looked over all the, I guess there's 13 stipulations?
Yes, I have.
And you're okay with all those?
Yeah. Like you said, we'll be building some berms back there gradually, and any of the equipment that we would be using will be as far east as we can put them, probably. I've talked to the owners. They have access to us. We're there 24, you know, our office is there, so we're always available for them. If they have an issue, I told them that they have my card and just let me know.
All right.
We have one access in there. We want strict control of what regulates goes in. It's pretty high priority for us to maintain that. But, we have KDHE permits, we do that every day on our projects. All the certifications on KDOT and everything.
Any other questions for John? Are we ready to make a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Special use permit, all right, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chair Waymire?
Yes. Thank you, thanks for coming in. All right, the seventh item, listed as the seventh item of business is to consider approving grant of a permanent right-of-way from Judy Hull.
As you know, we've had a number of these in the past wherein the comprehensive plan has identified a road classification system, and where the existing roads do not meet the full amount of right-of-way, when we go through the rezoning and the lot splits associated with that, which is just a simple form of subdivision, we do require then that they offer us a grant of easement to meet the minimum standards of the road systems that are identified in our comprehensive plan. So what we would be asking today is that you accept the grant of easement as it's being offered by Mrs. Hull for the associated survey and lot split that was being done on the property to accommodate the rezoning request that was recently approved.
All right. Is there a motion to accept the right-of-way grant?
Make a motion.
You want to be second?
Thanks.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chair Waymire?
Yes. All right.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I think that's it for you, Larry. Thank you. Thanks for your time. The price sticker. Our eighth item, or listed as our eighth item of business on our agenda is to consider participation in the Emergency Management Performance Grant Program. Alan Radcliffe, our Emergency Management Director, is here.
Good morning.
Morning.
This is a grant that we've participated in for over 10 years now. And we generally receive $27,000 or a little over. It's a federal grant that's passed through the state. It is a performance grant. We have to meet requirements, which are requirements we should be meeting anyway for the emergency management of our county. And as you know, we applied for a grant to update our emergency operations plan, which is one of the requirements that we have a current emergency operations plan. This is the application to accept that grant.
Motion to approve participation in this program.
Make the motion.
Second.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Chair Waymire?
Yes. All right, our listed as your ninth item of business is consider appointing Danielle Hinman to serve as Lincoln County, on the County Township Board.
We discussed two of these last week. We did the Greenwood Township Board and the Appnews Township Board. This one was published at the same time, although we had received a response, but it wasn't in formal writing, so we were waiting for the formal response to come. We did receive this letter from Mr. Hinman, who lives in Lincoln Township, and he is expressing interest in being the clerk and holding that position upon the next election.
Other questions? Much like the ones we've already done, is there a motion to approve appointing Mr. Hidman to serve on as the clerk of the Township Board?
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Chair Waymire?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay.
We're done with our items of business. I assume we're circling back to the
Well, yeah, you
co-op
guys.
special use permit.
Right. You made a motion to put the co-op special use permit back on the agenda for today. Couple of things happened while we were on our recess. A couple of you who voted in favor of continuing it indicated that you would have rather voted today, which is fine. And then speaking with co-ops council, he indicated a couple of things. One is that if this gets delayed, they miss an entire harvest. And two, a no vote from the board is effectively the same thing as continuing it to them. And so if it's the will of the board and it's the will of the co-op to hear this thing today, then here we are. And so it's back on the agenda. In the amount of time it took to get through the rest of the items, I was able to work with their attorney on some proposed language that may very well address the concerns that the board has. If you are okay with the language, you vote on the resolution, including the added terms. I revised the resolution. You've already approved it. It's just a matter of me getting it reduced to a document and getting it to Colton for his signature. We've also done that before. So with that being said, I would ask that Mr. Finch come up and read the conditions that we have discussed.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to say thank you to the county administrator for taking the time to sit down with me and talk through some proposed language. While he was working with you earlier, I kind of was listening to your comments and trying to come up with some language, and he's added improvements to make it better, I think, and more in keeping with what you'd like. So let's start with the dust control issue that seemed to be of primary concern. And this is the condition that we think would address that. Applicant will contract with the county to provide for application of 300 foot of dust control for each occupied residence within 1,000 feet of the applicant's property, and those residences on Reno Road between Texas and Utah roads, as well as those on Riley Drive between Texas and Utah roads. That will basically catch almost every residence within a mile of the facility in all four directions, because we have grain coming into the facility from all four directions, and does get that northern property on Riley Drive, I think is the road there, that goes around and catches Utah. There's only one residence to the north after you get past Miss Johnson's place. This is a total of 13 driveways. I know Commissioner Renaud had mentioned the possibility of 12 in his remarks earlier. This is one more than that. As I said, we want to be good neighbors and make sure that we try to cover as many of those properties as possible. And by covering some of Reno Road to the east, which had not been contemplated, that will even catch some that farmers bringing in their grain that direction.
It does get Reno from Texas to Tennessee also?
Reno from Texas, I'm sorry, it should be from Tennessee to Utah.
Okay.
The intent
all right.
is to cover that 2 miles of road. You're correct.
You said Reno from Tennessee to Utah. And then,
Residences on Reno Road between Tennessee and Utah,
okay,
as well as Riley Drive between Texas and Utah roads. Riley Drive is that turns into a diagonal when it comes out of there and connects over to Utah. The second concern that we heard from a lot of you was, what about bridge weights and what's going on with that bridge on Texas Road there at the intersection? I've got Clark here. I want him to tell you this next part because this is very important to the co-op.
In regards to the Ottawa Co-op trucks, we do not go across that bridge if our trucks are loaded, and we haven't for the last 2 years at least. So all of the trucks that are owned by the Ottawa Co-op, and we also instruct any contractors that the route that we take to get out of that facility does not involve a bridge to get back to the interstate. So it goes around that Riley Road up in that direction.
Can I ask a question? What is the route you instruct your drivers to do?
They go up that Riley, and then I'm not for sure what the roads are, but you hang a left, go over the interstate,
Utah.
get to the blacktop, which leads you back to the Wellsville exit.
And my concern there is there's 4 houses on that strip of gravel that I think we're missing then on this, what I understood you were going to cover.
We were going to go all the way up Riley, so it would get about a mile away from the site, is what we
I understand
proposed
that.
on the dust control.
But I just want to be clear, we're still not covering on Utah then from Riley Drive north to Shawnee, those houses on the
No.
side. Okay, I just want to make sure that that's,
There'd be,
but you're telling your truckers, I mean, that's the route you would go.
Correct.
but there'd be 3 times more trucks on that road now. I see 3 driveways, but
Fine, whatever.
And if it's a make or break for the commission, we can look at adding those into the description in that condition. I mean, again, it gets a little bit attenuated because we get pretty far away. And once they hit that intersection between Riley Drive and Utah, co-op drivers may do that, other drivers may go a different direction, contractors may go a different direction still. So it's hard to, how far out do you go? And that's why we tried to give one more than what Commissioner Renaud had mentioned, and trying to cover primarily the folks who are here today talking to you, the folks, the neighbors. So, go ahead, sorry.
Just one, what % of the grain hauled out is hauled out by Ottawa Co-op?
We only have 7 full-time grain trucks at the Ottawa Co-op. Obviously, when we go to unload at Lay Loop, we try to put 2 or 3 of our trucks on it. Sometimes there's a couple other ones. So I would say, on average, it's been about 50% or greater has been hauled out by the Ottawa Co-op. It might be a little different in regards to the grain in the bunker when we get it loaded out, because there's such a time sensitive. Once you open the tarp up, you want to get it moved out. So there'll be a lot more outside contractors that we'll bring in that short period of time to try and get the grain moved to market.
And I know I have probably people here on all those roads, but it seemed like to me there's more traffic going from Riley Drive to Shawnee than there is from the corner of Reno and Utah to Reno, or Texas to Utah and Reno. That, I mean, they would only be inbound people on that road, never an outbound that I would see. I guess you could go all the way around and come back across that. It wouldn't make sense to me, you going to Shawnee, but I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out, you picked which houses you picked based on what I'm thinking the traffic will be, but that's fine. I just letting you know what I was thinking.
We basically just tried to go about a mile beyond our facility
Right.
in every direction.
the Utah road's the most common route, I would think that, and if we're potentially tripling the amount of truck traffic with this special use permit, I think dust control on that would be fair.
The next issue raised was the bridge, and I had Mr. Winger come back up to tell you that co-op does not allow its drivers to drive across the bridge. We would propose to you that a condition could be added that says that the applicant will post signage at its facility that directs all of its drivers and contractors leaving the facility to follow all posted traffic laws, including bridge weights and speed limits. I know there's a discussion afoot about, well, maybe we'll change the speed limit at some point as an additional dust control measure. If you do, we want to make sure they know that. Really, there's not a legal way for us to make the co-op liable for traffic violations of other parties, but what we do want to do is act in good faith to direct everyone leaving that facility that they should honor all of the traffic laws, and specifically by including bridge weights, we bring it to their attention so that it is clear that we're asking them to not drive overloaded on bridges. So, Mr. Chairman, you made two suggestions, and I didn't know if you wanted them to see them as draft conditions or not. I drafted something on pest control and spoiled grain. Those are technically covered in other places, and we would ask that they not be included, but I can present those if you want them.
There's no sense in duplicating, I don't think. I don't know why. They're already
So-
told in language somewhere else.
Okay. So the two conditions in the dust control, which you added Utah Road between Riley Drive and Shawnee, which catches the concern raised by Commissioner Renaud and puts us up, I think, about 15, 16 residences. And then the second one there is about the posting for drivers and contractors, requiring them to follow all posted traffic laws. So,
All right.
okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your consideration.
I think it's only fair we allow the opposition a chance to speak at this point.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak again. It is a step in the right direction. It's, I guess, the best we can hope for at this point if you're going to push this to a vote today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so we've outlined proposal in front of us for the special use permit with the conditions described. Any other comments, questions before we look to vote on this?
And to be clear, the motion that would need to be made would be to approve the resolution with the additional two conditions mentioned by Blaine. And that is specific enough because I have that, I mean, we drafted it together, so I have the language. I can get that language in there, but I do want to make sure the motion mentions the two additional conditions, so.
Sounds good. Everyone okay with this? Going to a vote? All right, then we'd look for a motion to approve the special use permit with the two additional conditions described by the co-op's council.
Make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
Yes.
Chair Waitmeyer.
Yes. All right. That concludes our items of business. Bring us to agenda go. Staff reports.
I've had a couple of you reach out to me about our meeting scheduled for next week. That is, our meeting is scheduled for the same time that the governor in waiting, or the lieutenant governor is going to be down speaking at Ransom Memorial. I am going to be out of the office on Wednesday. I've talked to my staff, the elected officials. I don't think there's going to be any pressing business for next week. So in light of all of those, I guess I would bring those three to your attention should you decide to either not have next week's meeting or just state that, you know, you're going to be convening at the hospital to, because technically if all of you went or a quorum of you went, that would technically be a meeting, and so we would want to notice that up, but there wouldn't be any items of business. It would just be basically notifying the public that that's where you're going to be on that date at that time doing, if that were agreeable by the board, so.
I'd like,
I would agree. I would say let's skip the next week's meeting. If you're going to be out of town, there's not much on the agenda. If we don't have a meeting next week, I'm going to probably leave town myself, so I will not be at the hospital. But
good practice just to notify the public that we'll all be, you know.
I do plan to attend.
Okay,
I'm going to the Eggs and Issues meeting.
okay, and Roy or Colt or one of you going?
Probably go to the hospital.
Okay.
I plan on going.
Okay, so what we can do is Janet and I and Joy can put an agenda together that has no items of business, just states that at that time you'll be at the hospital listening to the governor in waiting, and that'll be that, so.
Sounds good.
That's all I have.
All right, Sheriff, you have staff reports you'd like to share? No, you don't want to make this any longer? All right.
You didn't want to buy lunch.
I'd just like to let you guys know that as we speak, I have someone in my office programming the ballots for the upcoming election in November. So we are definitely moving forward on that. So this will be our first city school election in the fall/winter. So I'm be anxious to see if it does improve voter turnout as it's projected to. So
Good.
any questions about that, be happy to answer them.
All right. Commissioners' comments, board reports.
I haven't been to any meetings since. I would just like to thank Mr. Stone King for the effort you put in and the way you handled your side of it. I was impressed. Thank you.
Last Wednesday night, I attended the Wellsville City Council meeting and several items, but one, they really discussed the radio financing and looking forward to participating in that program and getting that done. So, you know, I think it's a good move that we did the county with the radios.
Nothing. I attended FCDC board meeting with Derek. By and large, about everything that was discussed was recapped at the beginning of the meeting. As far as the website, I don't know if they mentioned the annual banquet will be coming up on October 12th. I'm sure invites will be sent off for that. And there's an update given to that body about the OCPI, the downtown project, joint venture between the various entities downtown. So, yeah, I would echo as far as opposition to this. You know, land use is a very emotional thing. A lot of times in the past it has doesn't always bring out the best in people. But Mr. Stone King and everybody for their thank you for your professional and civil nature. So, all right. With that, ask for a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Second. Anybody second?
Second.
You have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.